Okay, well, in case anyone's wondering, I am still alive. I just have not been able to get on the internet for the last since Friday night. I don't know. My internet has been the slowest internet of all time. I'm talking like 10 minutes to load one page. I thought maybe it was just my internet. It's just the town that I live in. Something was messed up with the internet. I even went to my mom's house. Internet was the same at her house. So yeah, I guess I'm starting to think maybe that's why I couldn't comment on people's videos and whatnot from before, where I made a video talking about that. Um, I still there's a few people I can't comment to still, so I don't know what the problem is. My internet's all messed up. But that being said, I want to move on and I want to talk about the possible Super Bowl winner. But I watched Zachary K. Hubbard's video earlier when I got off work. Very interesting video. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I think that the Kansas City Chiefs have a better chance of winning it, only for the fact that they're coded to like all kinds of the storylines that I have been following. But that also doesn't necessarily mean anything because the Chicago Cubs were super coded for the World Series, and then they didn't end up even making the World Series. So I'm just going to show some interesting things about the Kansas City Chiefs and how it ties into Philadelphia, San Francisco, multiple other things, and how it might tie in to the Super Bowl. I also have not looked that in depth at some of the other teams, so it could possibly change my mind. But as far as right now, my pick for the World Series, my pick for the Super Bowl is the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Kansas City Chiefs qualified for the playoffs, so they made the playoffs after this game on December 27th against the Cleveland Browns. Interesting, I just talked about Chip Kelly, the Philadelphia Eagles coach, being fired, and the guy who replaced him was Pat Shurmur or whatever. Chip Kelly adds up to 47. The guy who replaced him adds up to 47. Chip Kelly got fired after 47 games in Philadelphia. But the guy who replaced him was a former head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and he had a 9-23 record. And I'll leave a little tag with a bunch of 923 stuff. It all ties into the Pope. Kansas City Royals were also connected to Pope Francis. Another reason why I believe they won the World Series. But anyway, this was in week 16. If you add up week 16 in Gematria, week 16 adds up to 50. Remember, it's Super Bowl 50. Just like Chiefs adds up to 50. I believe the Chiefs is the only team that's in the playoffs too that adds up to 50. It's also a span of 1 month, 11 days, kind of like 111 before the Super Bowl. And remember, the Kansas City Royals won the 111th World Series. They even won on 11-1 November 1st after Matt Harvey pitched 111 pitches. Tons of other 111 connections. It's even connected to Queen Elizabeth, who was born on the 111th day of the year. They're the Kansas City Royals. And this year is also the first year ever that the Chiefs and the Royals both made the playoffs in the same season, or the same year. Also interesting about this day that the Chiefs made the playoffs, the date numerology, 12 plus 27 plus 20 plus 15, is 74. And if you don't put the 20 in, it's 54. Like love, talked lots about the Valentine's Day reference, but dealing with 74, 2-7 to Queen Elizabeth's birthday is a span of 74 days. And it's also from her birthday to July 4th, like 7-4 is also a span of 74 days. Or 2 months and 13 days. 2-13, the first day of Lupercalia. I've mentioned this over and over, how everything seems to be tied into Lupercalia, Philadelphia, tons of other stuff with it. Another 111 dealing with this. The last time that the Chiefs went to and also won the Super Bowl was on January 11th, 1970, Super Bowl IV. So 111. Right now, the Chiefs quarterback is number 11, Alex Smith. Interesting, in Gematria, Alex Smith adds up to 111 as well. Also interesting, dealing with Philadelphia, Alex Smith, it doesn't show it on here. It shows after the Raiders game, his regular season passing yards was 3,486, but he had 156 yards in this game. So after the Browns game where they made the playoffs, he had 3,330 yards, kind of like 333. And that, once again, ties back into the Royals in Philadelphia. Philadelphia turned 333 years old this year on October 27th, and that was the same day that the World Series began this year, that the Kansas City Royals won. It also, in 1985, it is the day that Back to the Future ends on the movie, on part 3, where the train destroys the time machine. It is October 27th, 1985. That same day, the Kansas City Royals won the World Series 30 years ago. So also, Alex Smith was a former San Francisco 49er. So the 49ers or San Francisco are hosting the Super Bowl 50 this year. Interesting, he got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, similar to Joe Montana. But in Gematria, Kansas City equals 122, just like San Francisco, just like Pope Francis. Also, I just typed in Chiefs win Super Bowl 50. It adds up to 122 as well. And this year, they decided to go with 50 like the numeral instead of the Roman numeral L. But if you type in Chiefs win Super Bowl L, it adds up to 239. Right now, we're in the 239th year of the United States. To put this one in perspective, though, if you put Broncos in there instead, Broncos win Super Bowl 50, it adds up to 329 and also 122. So interesting. And then the 329 is like the 923 backwards. It's the 88th day of the year. And if you put Broncos win Super Bowl L, in reduction, it's 95. Just kind of interesting because this is the 95th year of the NFL. So, who knows? Just wanted to put a little perspective in there. And there's a lot more that ties into this. I'll kind of come back to it, but Alex Smith here, he was the 11th pick in the draft. He is number 11. He played college at Utah, and he took them to the Fiesta Bowl and got them a victory that made them 11-0. The game was even played on 1-1, similar to 11. It was also the 34th edition of the Fiesta Bowl. Interesting because when he got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs from San Francisco, he was traded for the 34th pick in the draft. Just want to show you here, Alex Smith. Niners announced this trade. They will receive the Chiefs' second-round pick, 34th overall. Also, if you go and you count up his career games with the Chiefs, he just won his 31st game with the Chiefs. He is 31 years old right now. Also, that means that if he wins the Super Bowl, that'll be his 34th win with the Chiefs. Also, the number 34 has been very significant this year in many things that I've talked about dealing with the Civil War. There's also a Moses theme. Abraham Lincoln supposedly freed the slaves, just like Moses. It all ties into Pope Francis. Pope Francis, when he came to the White House this year on 9/23, that's 34 days before the 333rd anniversary of Philadelphia. He's from Buenos Aires, which is located on 34 degrees south. You even have the mirrors here. Vatican is 43, Greece 43. Also, even like Joe Flacco, he adds up to 34. He was the MVP of Super Bowl 47, the one where the 49ers lost. It was the Harbaugh, the domestic violence, right? The two brothers fighting it out or whatever. Interesting, the Ravens won with 34 points. The power went out for 34 minutes, or the game came back on 34 minutes later. Also, when the power went out, the score even added up to 34. The game was even played on the 34th day of the year. And this was the year that Alex Smith got hurt and he couldn't play or whatever, and they put in Kaepernick. Jim Harbaugh was the one who did that. Now he's the Michigan coach. Jim Harbaugh adds up to 98, just like Tom Brady, the former Michigan Wolverine. Lupercalia, the festival where they sacrifice and celebrate the wolf, adds up to 98. Michigan Wolverines adds up to 98. Lots of interesting things all tying into that. That's a whole nother video in itself. But even all the people in this, like Alicia Keys sung the national anthem. She's 34 years old this year. Then they had Destiny's Child at the halftime show. And two of them are 34 years old. And then one of them's 35 now. But just interesting. I'll just scroll through some of them here. This was called the Harbowl. Harbowl adds up to 34. Tennessee, that all ties into the Civil War, whatever. I want to get down here farther. There's a whole bunch of Moses references. Abraham Lincoln even became president on 3/4. He was born on the 43rd day of the year. Died 4 years and 3 days exactly after the Civil War began. Kansas just so happened to be the 34th and last state to join the Union before the Civil War. The Chiefs and the Royals don't play in Kansas City, Kansas, but they play in Kansas City, Missouri. But just interesting, Kansas City also does tie into Kansas. But Lincoln adds up to 34, assassination 43, murder 34, Civil War adds up to 34. I believe that's actually 43. Yeah, I just had a little typo there. But what sticks out, I guess, so Super Bowl 50. If you write out Super Bowl 50 in Gematria, it adds up to 71, right? And Moses also adds up to 71. And also, most people know Moses for the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments equals 71. I also have Nebraska in here because Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, just like Moses. Nebraska equals 71. Abraham Lincoln adds up to 60. Lincoln, Nebraska adds up to 60. Interesting now that this is 2016, so that 1960 is 56 years ago. 56 has been a really popular number as of late. Just a few here. Paris, France, 56. ISIS, 56. You even had Ronda Rousey lose, 56. Sponsored by Reebok, 56. Tons of 56. Chip Kelly even adds up to 56. It's just over and over and over. But interesting, the Kansas City Chiefs were established 56 years ago. And there's more to go along with that as well. Joe Montana's even 56 years old this year. I'll bring that back up. I'm going to make probably 2 or 3 parts. There's a lot of information on this. But in regards to the 71 stuff again, tying into Moses and whatnot. So, Moses, there's so many 34s around Moses. It's unbelievable. Exodus 34, Hebrew 34, Egyptian 43, Serpent 34, Red Sea 34, Canaan 34. He only went to the top of Mount Sinai 34, Passover 34, Golden Calf 43, Moses was the lawgiver 43. There's just been so many references to Moses. The Chiefs even made the playoffs beating the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland is even named after a guy named Moses Cleveland. And the Chiefs, when they play, the fans all wear red, so they're called the Sea of Red, So Moses parted the Red Sea. The Chiefs play in the Sea of Red, just like the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's how it all tied into that. Also wanted to point out, Golden Super Bowl and Super Bowl, if you write out the word 50, they both add up to 71. And Super Bowl 50 is played in Levi's Stadium. Moses was in the tribe of Levi. Interesting to point out, too, I said Alex Smith was 31 years old. He just won his 31st game, and then the playoffs are beginning. But at Levi's Stadium, the record attendance is WrestleMania 31. Also in the Harbowl, the one that he didn't get a play in, San Francisco lost with 31 points. So maybe they're going to redeem him, 31. But ran out of time. I'll see you in part 2.